if an entrepreneur will do that, that's a huge transformation in their business. My business literally tenfolded its increase in 18 months. Tenfolded.
Dr. John Demartini, here we are again. Nice to see you again.
Yes.
You were one of my first really meaningful big interviews with my LinkedIn Heroes series. And so thank you very much for that. I don't know if you could tell at the time I was very, very nervous interviewing you, but it was an exceptional interview, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
I know that you talk a lot about living an inspired life, and relationships is a big part of life, right? And you talk about understanding what your values are and being able to find out what somebody else's values might be and how to communicate in this style of their values. Could you tell us, how does one find out what another person's values are without actually getting them to complete a questionnaire or something like that?
Like on the first night, for instance?
Well, what sort of questions do you generally ask to find out what someone's values are?
It depends on what type of relationship dynamic they're in.
Sure.
Whether it's social, business, personal. I don't think it's disrespectful if you sense that there is going to be some duration to the relationship, to let them know that many times in your past, you've developed relationships and didn't always understand what was truly important to the individual, and sometimes didn't communicate as effectively and respectfully as you had hoped. Mm. And one thing that you have learned is that if you find out what is important to the individual, what's really what they're up to, what they're dedicated to, it really does help in having a lasting relationship. And that this relationship that I would have with this new person, I would prefer to have a lasting one, a sustainable one. Mm. So if I was to ask some questions to get to really know what's really meaningful to you and how I might be able to help in any way in the fulfillment of that, would that be asking too much? I would just ask him. Mm. And then ask him questions and create a dialogue. Mm-hmm. And you could ask the value determination questions indirectly in different ways, but anything that would allow you to find out what they're really up to, what their life really demonstrates objectively, is going to assist you in more effectively communicating in those values.
Yeah. And so let's say, for example, that somebody has a value for a healthy lifestyle. They value family, they value fitness, for example. Then how do you use that information to communicate effectively with them? How do you use that information to be more influential, I suppose?
About 41 years ago or so, I was very much, it's been about 42 years since I've been studying values. And about 40 years ago or so, I started doing clinical work. And I noticed that patients would fill out a case history form and tell me that they had this particular condition or health issue. And I learned if I was to just go by what they claimed was their reason for being there, I found that was not always the case, the reason why they're there. So I learned to ask a question. What is this condition keeping you from doing that's extremely important to you, that's now brought you to the office? Because I see here on your history that you've been here or had this condition for 4 or 5 months, and you're just now getting care. Mm-hmm. So obviously it's not the condition with the symptoms of the condition, or you would have thought either it was going to go away and it hasn't gone away, or it's interfering with something that's important to you. What is that? And they will say something like, well, my shoulder pain has been happening, and yesterday I was driving on the freeway and I was getting on an on-ramp and I couldn't turn my neck and my shoulder was sore, and because of it I had a blind spot and almost ran into a truck. Mm. And I said, so now it wasn't the pain in the shoulder that brought you in here, it was actually that you were afraid that you were going to drive, and now you say your kids were in the back seat and you're afraid you're going to kill your kids. Mm. So what was really important to you is your children's health and security, safety. Yeah. So you came here because of that. That was really the driving force. So I learned to ask questions that were not really obvious to people, because sometimes they would talk about things and not really get to what was really important to them, and try to ask questions and probe into what was really driving individuals subtly over a period of time, if I knew I was going to see them over a period of time, or more direct
Yeah.
And ask permission if I get to know them that way. Because people don't disrespect you for asking questions when it's about their life.
Yeah.
That's the primary thing that they love talking about.
Yes.
So if you ask questions about, tell me more about it. How did you do? How did you start this? Where did you do? What's the challenge you face? And just start asking questions. You can gather data that can help you identify what's really important to them.
Yeah.
And then more effectively communicate in a way, or offer product, service, or ideas, if you're in sales, in a way that they get those needs met.
Yeah, and I can definitely see how that like applies in a business relationship and in sales. In a romantic relationship, for example, is it just a matter of like learning, what's important to them, and so that you can be, give them love in the right way, or is it more than that? Is it a communication style?
Well, if I was going out on a date and I wanted to get to know somebody, asking them questions about their life, not interrogations, dialogue.
Sure.
But asking questions about their life, they appreciate.
Of course, yeah.
Because you're talking about what's the most important topic.
That's right, yeah.
So you'll just say, where do you live? I live in a condominium. If I was to walk in the condominium, what would I see? That tells me a lot about people.
Sure.
And I would get an idea what they fill their space with.
Yeah.
And what do you do? What's your typical day? What do you do for your day? How do you spend your day? You work, but what else do you do? What's important to you?
Yeah.
And what is it that inspires you? What is it that energizes you in life?
And how is it important?
And asking those questions helps you narrow it down.
Yeah, sure. And so how important is it, if you're sharing your life with somebody, that they have the same values or complementary values?
Well, they're not going to. If any two people are exactly the same, one's not necessary. You don't grow from the same values. You grow from complementary opposite values in most cases. The ancient Greeks said if you have too many similarities and you're infatuated, you get bored. If you have too many differences, you get resentful and you get burned out. If you have a balance of things that support and challenge you, you have a nice, loving relationship. So you'll look very carefully. You'll find out that the person that you really do have a stable relationship with is going to have things that are similar. You'll have things in common, but there's going to be things that are completely opposite.
Yes, that's right.
And you're going to delegate things to them that's important to them, and they're going to delegate things to you that's important to you.
Okay.
And that's why it works. Otherwise, there's no purpose in each other.
I'm with you. Yeah, okay. That makes perfect sense to me, because it is also where a lot of conflict can come, because one of the partners could project their values onto the other person.
Well, anytime we have an executive center in the forebrain that is more objective and more equitable. And then we have the amygdala in more of the lower subcortical area that is more interested in infatuations or pride. So while we're infatuated, we'll sacrifice what we want for them. While we begin to get resentful and proud, we tend to sacrifice what they want for us. And we tend to project our values onto them. And then we expect them to live in our values, which is a dead-end road for a relationship.
Yeah.
And if we expect us to live in their values, it's another dead-end road. You got to be able to find a way of doing what's fulfilling your life by at the same time doing it in a way that helps them fulfill theirs.
Yeah.
And if you do, then you've got a sustainable relationship.
Yeah, you summed it up very well. So last time we also talked about your journey and meeting Paul Bragg and the transformation you had when you were 18 years old, was it? Or
well, it was about a week before my 18th birthday.
I see, okay. And so like up until your 18th birthday, your life would have been very different. And then rebuilding from there with your help of your mother, you educated yourself from basically grade one. How long did it take before you developed self-confidence and got your self-esteem?
Well, it depends on different areas of life and different topics and things I was doing. I think some things that you're more knowledgeable about that you feel more confident in were going to be earlier. And other, like surfing, I was pretty confident in.
Yeah.
Walking on the beach and saying hi to girls was pretty good. I knew how to do that. But reading a book and learning how to articulate the knowledge back, regurgitating it back, or sharing it with somebody was yet to be mastered. And that took a gradual process that I hope to get mastered before I pass.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We're constantly working on that.
Yes.
But I think that, in Toastmasters, when somebody's learning how to speak, Toastmasters has what they call the icebreaker. And the icebreaker is you going up and standing in front of a group of people and you speaking about your life. Because nobody knows as much about your life as you. So there's no anxiety about them being experts out there that know more about what you're about to talk about than you. And so it's easier for you to speak up.
Confidence, yeah.
But imagine if you were about to speak on how to build a business and the audience was nothing but Bezos, Gates, Buffett, and Branson. And your whole audience was nothing but the top CEOs, and you were going to talk about it. And you were 30 years old and you were just starting your little business, and you were going to talk about how to have success in a business. You'd probably feel a little bit awkward and probably intimidated by that audience. Because the second you are too humble to admit what you see in that audience compared to you, and you're minimizing you and exaggerating them, you're going to hesitate and you're going to have lack of confidence. But the moment you level that playing field or can see that you have something to contribute to that, you'll speak up.
Yeah. And so it sounds like self-esteem is something that you can build by yourself over time.
There's many ways of building it. You can make sure you're only doing things that is really high on your values.
Okay.
So that's something you build momentum and confidence in, because you're more likely to be reliable and disciplined and focused there. You can also make sure you speak about only things you know that you're certain about. If you stick to the things you know and are certain and let what you know grow, you will gain and will build momentum and confidence.
Yeah. So I work in the social media space. I don't know. I don't know how active you are on social media, but one of the big challenges that a lot of business owners have on social media is they're very impatient, and I hate to say it, but very selfish as well. And so in terms of like getting them to understand the concept of actually adding value to somebody else to build a sustainable brand is actually quite challenging, because they could understand it at I guess at a surface level, but then their actions don't reflect that. Have you got any advice for me perhaps on how you can actually help somebody become more patient and add more value that may not recognize the need yet?
Well, if they're going out there and they're projecting what they think they have to offer people without actually introducing themselves, establishing rapport, confirming an actual need, or establishing and confirming a need before you offer a service, you're going nowhere. Because we make assumptions that we know what the market wants.
Yeah.
And whenever you do that, you usually that assumption makes you, what the assume means. And what it's wiser to do is to ask questions. To sell is not to tell, it's to ask questions.
Yeah.
Asking questions about what people's needs are, and then finding the one that you're absolutely certain you can make a difference in, and then asking them if they would like to have some help in that area.
Yeah.
If you do that and think long term, you're going to build a bigger brand than you are for immediate gratification. Immediate gratification costs you economically, socially, relationship. Every area of your life is affected by immediate gratification.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think social media really amplifies that because it's so high on the customer journey right at the start.
I was writing something for a television network in London that I'm about to do, and it's kind of a precursor, pre-interview. And they're asking what I hope to get out of the thing. And I wrote in there, I said, well, I don't know your audience yet. I'm still investigating your audience. But you know your audience and you know what they need. So whatever it is that will be of value, the highest value to that audience, that's what I'm interested in answering questions about and doing an interview about. Because it's not about me just telling people about what I'm doing, unless that'll serve them. It's about what it is that they have as their needs and what I might be able to do to help. Yeah.
I think social media has actually educated me on how to be a better business person, because you get that immediate reflection, whether or not you're adding value.
Yeah, you can't fake it. It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
You get response. But, people are not listening unless you're meeting a need. Because if it's not fulfilling your highest values, they tune out.
Exactly.
And their highest value is where they filter their reality. And so they have what I call attention surplus order in their highest value and attention deficit disorder in their lowest.
Makes sense.
So if you don't meet something that's highest on their value, they shut out pretty quick.
Yeah. How do you think technology is affecting society at the moment? And how do you think, is it having a positive impact, negative impact, or do you have an opinion?
I don't think it has any of those. I think that it's how people use it.
Yes.
Technology is neutral. Technology is neither good nor evil. And even the way people use it isn't good and evil. It just may not be accomplishing what they hoped and what other people hope. And everybody's projecting their values about how something's supposed to happen on the social media.
Yes.
But the social media is neutral. It's just a vehicle. A telephone is just a vehicle. It's what you say on that telephone that makes the difference.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
So if you go on there and you do social media and you do it in a way that's meeting people's needs, and you're not doing it at the expense of somebody else's values, everybody's going to be appreciative.
Yep.
And social media will be seen as a great contribution. But if you're doing something that's undermining your family and undermining your own health and undermining your own self-image, and you're not it's providing a value, then you're going to have feedback from people, and you're going to think and project it onto the social media. But the social media is just neutral.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about you, John, is you don't do things that are not high on your values list. Like you don't drive a car, for example.
Now, it's been 31 years since I did that.
What are some of the other things you don't do? I'm just curious.
I don't cook. I don't do administrative. Wow. I don't do financial things.
Yeah.
I monitor my investments periodically.
Yeah.
But all the administrative, all the financial, all that stuff has been hired to specialists, and they take care of it, and it's electronically done, so nobody can mess it up.
Yeah.
It's got controls in it, everything else. I research, write, travel, teach. That's it.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
I'm looking forward to the breakthrough experience, particularly because of the wealth and financial stuff that you talk about. I think that's an area that I'm going to get a lot of value out of. So I'm looking forward to that. I have a bit of an out there question. What's your favorite musician or band? Do you listen to music?
I don't really keep up with the bands today.
Well, it doesn't have to be today.
Yeah, I enjoyed rock and roll when I was a kid.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, cool.
I liked Led Zeppelin. I liked the Rolling Stones. I liked all the rock bands back when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And usually when you're a teenager, that's sort of the music that you kind of lingers through your life.
Yeah.
But I will have to say that there's been many songs throughout the decades that have had impact on me. But I'm not really focused on music for some reason. You don't hear music playing in my place. I don't listen to music that much unless I know some musician, and then I'll go and listen to him.
Yeah.
I'm consulting with a musician and a singer right now. And when I do, then I'll listen to them and I'll find out what they're doing, and so I can help them more.
Yeah.
But I don't have my life filled with music most of the time, believe it or not.
What do you do for fun?
I research, I write, I travel, and I teach. Awesome. People don't get it. They don't realize that when you're doing something you really love to do, you don't really want to escape it. Yes. People ask me, what do I do to chill out? Chill out for what? I get to do what I love every day.
Yeah.
So they don't comprehend that. I really love researching, writing, traveling, and teaching.
And are you still living on the boat?
I still live on the ship when I'm there.
It's
most of the time I'm traveling and I'm in hotels.
Yeah, okay. So I posted on LinkedIn and said, "Who's got a question for John? I'm seeing him this afternoon." And everyone was like, "Wants to know how's the yacht, how's the boat?"
Well, when I'm there, I mean,
there's a lot of people living on it, isn't there?
There's 100 people that live on there, and I've been on there. This is going on the 19th year.
Yeah, right.
And I have been off and on it over the years. I don't stay on it all the time. When my wife was alive, Athena, from Melbourne, we were on there much more because she was on there almost full time. And I would rendezvous with her because I had a motive to go there.
I didn't realize she was from Australia.
So. Yeah, she was from Australia.
Yeah, right.
She passed away over 15 years ago. But today, my highest priority is to research, write, travel, teach, and teaching. And so whenever I get an opportunity to do that, I just love doing it.
Yeah.
I'd rather do that than anything else. So
yeah.
I do.
Well, and millions of people are glad that you do. I want to ask you about grief briefly. It's an area where you've shared some really insightful insights, I guess. Could you talk us a little bit about coping mechanisms? How does somebody deal with grief when somebody's close to them has passed away?
Well, I've just written in the last probably week about 6 articles on that. I'm working on a book on that. So,
good. Okay.
And I can get you a copy of those if you want. I just wrote one for 2 Turkish magazines and a newspaper and some here. So,
fantastic.
I've developed a methodology that I started developing in 1984 that I've been using ever since. And it's a very powerful science to dissolve grief. And people don't believe you can dissolve grief, but the truth is you can. Grief has 2 sources. The perception of loss of that which you seek, or the perception of gain of that which you try to avoid. So the perception of loss in the subcortical area of the brain, the amygdala, you live with a desire for prey, food, consumption, and the desire to avoid predator, being eaten. So eating or being eaten.
Yes.
You seek and you avoid. Anything that you associate in your brain with support represents the prey, and anything that challenges you represents the predator. So anytime you are perceiving that you're about to lose something that is very valuable to you, could be a loved one, it could be money, it could be a girlfriend or boyfriend, it could be a business opportunity, it could be an arm or an eyesight. Anything that you value and support your values that you perceive the loss of, you can have grief over. And anything that you devalue and want to avoid and don't want to deal with, that's like a predator to you, that is destructive to you in your mind. If it comes close to you, that's grief. So grief is due to the perception of loss of that which you seek, that which supports your values, or the perception of gain of that which you try to avoid, the things that challenge your values. So if you're infatuated with somebody, and they're all of a sudden about to leave you, you'll have grief. And if there's somebody you resent deeply, if they're about to come close to you, you're going to have grief. But grief is counterbalanced like a quantum entanglement with relief. And relief has two sources. Relief is anytime you gain something that you're seeking, or anytime you lose something you're trying to avoid, you have relief. So if you finally are hungry and you get to eat, oh, what a relief. If the bills stop coming in, oh, what a relief.
Yeah, okay.
So anytime you seek something and you feel a loss, grief, you feel a gain, relief. Anytime you are trying to avoid something and you feel a loss, it's relief. Anytime you feel a gain, it's grief. So that's biologically built into our amygdala, and it's a response that's in every animal, and it's in the animal part of human beings. But we have an executive center, the prefrontal cortex, that has nerve fibers and neurotransmitters that go down into the amygdala and calm those perceptions of seeking and avoiding and grief and relief and calm it down. We have the capacity to override that.
Right.
And so I've developed a tool on how to dissolve the infatuations and dissolve the resentments or the seeking and the avoiding and neutralize it and bring things into objectivity and liberate people from the grief. Because when somebody dies, you're not missing the things you resent about them. You're only missing the things that you infatuated with them. And the truth is you had both sides about them. When Donald Trump and his team knocked out that Iranian guy, in America they were celebrating and they were relieved. In Iran they were devastated and they were grieved because they saw him as a hero and America saw him as a villain. So they were having a different perspective about it. We were having a different perspective about it. Because again, if you are infatuated with something, you fear its loss. If you resent something, you fear its gain.
But then there's we like to hold on to things like grief, and it might be because of our values, mightn't it?
No, it's not. It's purely because we're hooked by the things we were infatuated with relative to that individual. And if you ask questions to neutralize it, which is what my method is, you can dissolve it. And it's not that it takes max 3 hours I've ever taken. Max.
Wow.
And we did it in the Christchurch earthquake. We did it in the tsunami in Ishimaki, Japan. We did it in also the recent earthquake in Japan. We've done that. It's worked. It's a very powerful thing. And people don't believe that's possible, but it doesn't matter. I'm absolutely certain it does.
Yeah, no, I believe it is.
You're going to see it this weekend. I'm going to demonstrate it at the Breakthrough Experience on Sunday. You'll see it live.
Wow. The saying, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Is that true or not?
You can make a horse drink if you're really astute at finding out what's important to the horse and providing what you want them to do in terms of that. They have their own driving forces. I mean, you can train an animal to do a lot of stuff that you didn't know you could train if you're skilled at the training process with conditional reflexes. So I know people who can take a horse and lead them to the water and make them drink. Give them enough reasons for drinking.
So what you're saying is that people who, if somebody is resistant to change,
that means you're not communicating in their values.
Yeah.
See, every decision a human being is making is based on what they believe will give them the greatest advantage or disadvantage. If you communicate in a way where they're getting more advantages out of doing the things that you suggest than disadvantages, and more than any other options that they have available to do, they'll do it. But they've got to win out of it. They've got to win in their value system, not yours.
Yeah. You've done so many interviews. I know you do them all the time. What's a question that I should be asking you that I haven't? And I'm sure you've been asked this question plenty of times as well. But
Yeah, it's whatever you think will serve, as I said, the people that
audience.
you know.
Yeah.
Because if it's something I make up and I don't know your audience, then we haven't accomplished anything.
Yeah, sure. I guess, I mean, the entrepreneurs and the business professionals that are on LinkedIn, a lot of them are looking for strategies to grow their business. Whether or not that's what they need to grow their business, I'm not sure. But
So you would like me to share something that can help them grow their business?
I would love that.
Okay. In 1982, October, almost 1983, I came upon a book out of what I felt was a necessity called The Time Trap by Alec McKinsey. And as I was devouring that book, I was really realizing it was for me. You know how you pick up a book and go, they're talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about time management, or managing your actions in time. And I summarized the book into a really interesting chart. And I'll share this chart with people because I've shared it with governments, I've shared it with corporations, entrepreneurs, organizations of all sorts. And it is very eye-opening. So what you do is you take a piece of paper, or if you're on your computer, you just create a file form. And you put 6 columns. So 5 lines, 6 columns. The far left column, if you're imagining 6 columns across, the far left one, you write down every single thing you do in a day. Every single thing you do in a day in an average 3-month period. So you might do something on Tuesdays or Wednesdays or Thursdays or whatever that are different than the other days, but if you add them all up, list everything that you do in a day. Everything. Nothing's too small. And not projects like accounting. The actual actions, the daily actions that you do in accounting or sales or whatever. The actual daily little actions you do. List them all.
Not what you should do, what you want, but what you do.
No, what do you do?
Yeah.
I don't want to know what you should do. I want to know what you're doing.
Yes.
Because that's what matters. Once I get that list, which will be pretty exhaustive in most people, right next to it I write down how much does it produce per hour? What does it generate? Because that's a reflection of how much service it's providing somebody that people are willing to pay for.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's meeting somebody's need. So you want to make sure you do it. So when I first did that, I was in clinical practice. And I did an exam, for instance, and it was $125, and it took me 10 minutes. And so if I multiply that and extrapolate it times 6 per make an hour, that'd be 6 times 125, which is basically $750 per hour. And I found out, okay, I'm making $750 an hour if I'm doing nothing but exams. And I did reports, and it was $400, but it was 2 hours work. So that's $400 divided by 2, that's $200 per hour. And then I did my actual office visits, meeting with people, and that came out to be about $1,200 to $1,500 an hour. Let's say $1,400 an hour. And I went down this list, and I did urinalysis and blood analysis and consultations and this and that. And I put the dollar values of what it would be if I was to do that. And then I got down to one that was professional speaking in front of audiences where I was generating new clients in business. And there I was generating way more because I'd get 5 or 6, 7 new patients. And the cases, the average was $3,000. So that's $20,000, $15,000 an hour. And I started looking at all the things I was doing and what I was generating per hour. And after I made that entire list, qualified into hours, I found that some things I were doing for free and others I was making money and others were just partial. And then I reprioritized that entire list based on what it actually produced. And that was really eye-opening because I was definitely realizing I was majoring in minors and minoring in majors.
Yeah.
I was putting a lot of energy into things that weren't really producing and devaluing myself. Because anytime you do things low on your values or low in productivity, you devalue yourself. Anytime you do high things, you raise your value. Once I did that, I then put another column, the third column, and I wrote down how much meaning does it have on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 meaning extreme meaningful, that's truly inspiring to you, down to forget it.
Yeah, right, okay.
And I wrote down all the meaning, because sometimes I would sacrifice meaning, do something for meaning instead of just profit. I would go and speak to 2,000 kids at a high school. They didn't pay me, but I got to speak to 2,000 kids and inspire kids, and that was really meaningful, but it didn't make any money. But maybe in the future I would generate new patients out of it, but it was long term. And then I put next to that in the next column, and by the way, I prioritized that according to meaning. So now I've got a list of all the real priorities according to productivity and priority of meaning. Because I'm looking for the most meaningful thing that produces the most. That's what I'm looking for in life.
Yes.
So I have the most fulfillment and the most productivity.
Yes.
Then I go next column and I wrote down how much does it actually cost to hire somebody, to delegate that to somebody to do those activities. And I'm making a list, and I want every dollar, not just their salary cost. I mean, their office use costs, their depreciation costs, training costs, insurance costs, parking costs, everything. I want to know down to the little paperclip. I want to know, what does it cost me to have somebody to do that job, that action? And then what I do is I go back and reprioritize that according to spread. Versus what does it cost me versus what it produces me? And I'm looking for the biggest spread, and I reprioritize according to spread. So I know if I was to delegate something, I get the most delegating that than anything else. So I want to delegate and get on to the most productive things. Then I look at how much time I'm spending on it, so I get a realistic idea of where my time is being spent. And I got to be honest with it. And then finally, in my final column, I reprioritize it according to all three priorities. How much it produces, what's the meaning, and what is the overall spread. And when I get through, I layered that into 10 layers. And then I hire somebody and delegate the lowest layer and get it off my plate and liberate myself, make more income, easily pay for that, and free myself up from doing things that lower my value and devalue and depreciate me. And then I do the next layer and the next layer until eventually I'm at the final layer where I duplicate myself. And I duplicate it in a franchise, or I duplicate it in some sort of a exit strategy or whatever, to make sure that I'm doing the highest priority things, making the most income, having the most meaning, generating the most spread, and allowing me to accomplish the most. If an entrepreneur will do that, that's a huge transformation in their business. My business literally tenfolded its increase in 18 months. Tenfolded.
Wow.
Once I did that exercise. Then I realized that if I'm not meeting their needs, I need to pay. I started video my dialogues with all my clients. I literally videoed everything. And I had a video going on at all times. I want to know what worked and what didn't work every day. And everything that worked, we documented. Everything that didn't work, we documented. We started making sheets of that to find out what was the communication, what was the priorities that we were doing, what was the 20% that gave me 80% results as far as getting an actual outcome that I was striving for. And that was really revealing, because we tend to want to filter our reality to protect our own weaknesses and our own, facades, instead of actually looking objectively at how we're functioning. And sometimes an outside person like a mentor or a coach can help us see that, but just videoing it really does a great job.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. And so there's obviously the planning, and then there's the implementation where you have to have some management skills.
Well, if you don't have the management skills and that's not really valuable to you, you need to hire the person to do it.
Okay.
I don't do that today. I hire somebody to do that. Somebody that's, they love, that's their love. I research, write, travel, teach today, because I realize that when I'm presenting, I generate the most, and I'm inspiring the most, reaching out to the most, and leveraging myself out the most. I mean, sometimes I'll do a show that's 500 million people on a show. That's in the networkings that's being there, and that's way more leverage than me sitting doing a one-on-one with somebody, for instance. But in the process of doing that, that's the most effective use of my time. Then I found out that if I'm not inspired when I'm doing that, and I don't have new information that I want to share, I don't have the most impact. So that's where my research comes in. And getting clinical research from actually feedback from clients, and also just research and learning on a daily basis. So I have 19 specialists referring me stuff in every single day. So I'm constantly refreshing new information, so I have something new to say.
Fantastic.
So I have researching and writing, and I write tons of articles, and then I'm presenting, and then I travel. Because I made a commitment to go to every country. I've been to 154 countries, and I still got 50-something countries to go.
Oh, cool. John, I really want to be respectful of your time. I've just got one more question, which would be an easy one, and then we can wrap up. But you mentioned to me that if you can do an interview like this, you generally say yes. I'm just curious to find out, why that is, and whether or not you measure, the results of these interviews, or is it just something that you decided to do to add value to the world?
Well, no doubt. I have London Real TV coming up in a week and a half, and that's a lot of people on there. And if I had a choice between one that does, hundreds of millions of people reaching, or something that does 1,000 people, I would, if I had that allocation of time, I'd go that one. But at the same time, I've also realized that if I'm reaching somebody on a media of some form, if I was speaking to that many live, I'd be grateful. If I've got 1,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 people, if I was in an audience in a big convention, so I'd be sitting there grateful for that. So really, I don't know who's going to be out there. I've had a situation where I've done a presentation and one individual out there has opened up doorways. And I can't say that it's always from the big numbers, which is usually more mass media. Sometimes it's from the ones that are smaller and more compact and more, niche. I have a guy that just wanted me to speak, was there last night in China to 200 business leaders, very important business leaders. Great. If I go to speak to 200 people, that's fantastic. So sometimes that is just as effective and meaningful to me. And that sometimes go viral and sometimes it goes out and it reaches other people. Yeah. And so I don't know. I take advantage of every opportunity I can where I can share a message with people most of the time.
Yeah.
There's some I'll turn down, but very few.
Yeah, I think that's going to work in your favor in this social media age. Certainly with my content marketing, I've had the same approach and it's very difficult to measure. But like you say, you might get the biggest client you've ever got and it happens to be from the free event that you did for, a few startups, and you just don't know.
Well, I did a coast-to-coast radio that goes to 620 stations the other day in Miami. And it's reached 52 million people that day.
Wow.
And I was grateful for that because I'm reaching a lot of people. And it was a great interview. It was 2 hours. But at the same time, I met another lady that happened to be on there that then contacted my hotel because she looked on my website and found I was in a particular city at a hotel doing programs. So she just guessed and found me and called my room.
Smart, yeah.
And she's a leading voiceover individual in America. And she said, I want more people to hear what you have to say, so I'm giving you 2 more leads. And it's another probably almost 100 million people outreach. And so I thought, okay. I reached a program, and now one individual that came along out there opened up doors for another 100 million people. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't know where that's going to come from. I was doing a group the other day for a doctor that only had 1,000 people on that system and doing a podcast. But one of them just contacted me and asked me to do a conference up in Canada with 3 very significant people in the health industry. And so I now opened up a doorway in the health industry. I'm coming up to Toronto anyway, and we added on, and I'm now going to be a guest speaker on that conference, and he's marketing the hell out of that to all the health professionals there. And so that little event led to things that I don't always get from big events. So I can't always guarantee where that's going to come from.
Yeah.
If I have a choice between a large one and a small one in the same hour, I'll make a decision. But if I have the ability to do have another hour in there, I'd rather do an hour. And some of them I do at 3 o'clock in the morning in another country. I get up and I'll do the show for an hour and I'll go back to bed and I'll get up and speak the next morning speaking.
When people ask me about you, I say John really, really loves what he does.
Well, people don't get it. They come up. I got to share a story. It's a funny story. I'm speaking in Hua Hin, Thailand.
Thailand, yeah, beautiful.
And I'm speaking at a wellness summit. And there's Four Seasons, there's Ritz-Carlton, there's Mandarin Oriental, and there's all these major hotel firms and all these spas, La Prairie, all the spas, everything's there, right? And they've got booths everywhere, and it's a major thing, and I'm the guest speaker, keynote speaker.
Yeah.
And I get picked up from the airport from the most beautiful woman in Miss Thailand, most beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And she's in CoverGirl, and she's on all the signs as you're driving from the airport. And I'm just like thinking, it doesn't get much better than this, right? You get this beautiful woman to pick you up at the airport. It takes you to the hotel. They've got an amazing suite for me. They've got fruit. There's orchids everywhere. Dining with this lady. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner with this lady. She's the one that takes care of everything.
Oh, wow.
I'm getting paid thousands of dollars to go and do this presentation. And then at lunch, they have a press conference. And I'm literally up on this kind of stepping waterfall thing with orchids everywhere, where water's coming down this wall and then coming down, cascading down into the lobby. And then it's a beautiful resort. And right out where I'm standing, I'm looking out and there's the beach there. And there's bikinis and beautiful girls. And it's just, and I've got this beautiful woman next to me and her friend. And I've got 40 people from the media asking me questions. And, I'm thinking, it doesn't get much better than this. And this lady comes up, this little bitty Thai lady. She says, Dr. Demartini, I see on your website, you very busy man. what do you do for vacation? What do you do to chill out, basically? And I
love to tell
smiled.
people.
I smiled and I thought, chill out from what? Chill out from this? Do I need a break from this?
Did you wear your suit in Hawaii?
No, I didn't. Not speaking. But when you're doing something you really love to do, you don't have this idea that I need a break. I need to have a holiday. I need to retire. That's not what you think about. You think about doing what you love doing every day.
The people that pursue balance, it's a myth because balance is different to everyone, isn't it?
Well, I feel I have that balance. When
Yeah.
I'm speaking, I'm building my business. I'm socializing with people. I'm building my wealth. They're like a family to me in some respects. It's an extended family. I'm inspired by what I'm doing, so it's spiritual. I'm using my brain for intellectual stimulation. I'm physically keeping active and energized
Yeah, I've
for
seen
doing it.
that.
And I keep pretty intense, as you know. I feel like I'm getting all that balance. In my perspective, see, I don't compare my balance to somebody else's box.
Yes.
I compare it to what I dream about in those areas. I'm not interested in what other people expect me to do. I'm interested in what I love doing and how do I structure my life in a way of doing it and exemplify that.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be awesome if we all looked at life like that?
Well, we can.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely certain you can. It's just that I try my best to teach people how they can do it.
Exactly.
They can. There's no reason why you can't live an inspired life. Absolutely.
But the majority of people don't today, unfortunately.
They don't know they could.
Yeah.
They really don't know some really basic things. They're so used to fitting in and not standing out that they conform to tradition, convention, and mores that their mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers have imposed, which is mediocrity and probably drone life thinking and how to work. No one, when they go to high school, do they ever teach you how to be an entrepreneur? No. They teach you how to be independently wealthy. No. They teach you how to be a world leader. No. They teach you how to fit in.
Yeah.
And how to go and get in debt and pay your debts off and get a mortgage. And it's all survival mentality.
Yeah.
And so if they choose to do that and follow that path, then that's what they'll have.
Yeah. I would love to keep talking, but I know you've got another meeting to get to. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate catching up with you again.
Appreciate it. Thank you.